All right, everyone. Occult literature, video number 139, the Fama Fraternitatis of course, Rosicrucian lore, the main text that started it all, often paired with the Confessio, within literature. Literally, the two being combined into one work is sort of the works of Rosicrucianism, sometimes with the chemical wedding. I decided to keep it on its own, though I figured that was important to do. Link in the description, as always, to my edition of this work on Amazon. Second and third links are to my Blogspot and WordPress pages, the blogs there where I have all of my literature. You can find a great many works. I just released Mysteries of the Rosy Cross, which is sort of a combination, actually, of several Rosicrucian writings almost verbatim. In fact, it's in similar form ultimately, edited together with some notes and some third-party statements, as well as things about the Rosicrucians from other sources that weren't themselves Rosicrucian. Now, so an interesting work, but the Fama is notable in my mind, mainly in mentioning concepts that are actually spoken of within, pre-existent works within alchemy. We're talking sort of the Pontanus and Trithemius side. We're not necessarily talking about a Hollandus when we talk about this. There are different forms of alchemy, and that is just one component here, but essentially the Rosicrucian order spoken of here, it takes on the form here of a little bit of a short story, whereby sort of this aged master, having bound himself to other individuals, founds this order. They have obtained great wisdom, studying with the Arabians, with the Africans, actually, as well as within Germany, within the context of European lore. Things like medicine, the occult, philosophy of various kinds, to the point at which their wisdom, their godliness, their spiritual practice, which is elaborated on in other Rosicrucian texts, of course, was so great that they were able to stave off death, to be able to rejuvenate themselves, that they were able to create gold, that the processes of alchemy in the most literal and true sense, of course, they held to be real and claimed power of. Among other things, the ability to talk to animals, the ability to talk to various spirits. Airy spirits is listed, I believe, in the Confessio, if I remember correctly. Now, so this is a very important work. Its main importance for many in the literary sense is really that the Rosicrucian order spoken of, this literature, because of the mini moral panic it causes, influences the occult for literally centuries. So we've got Crowley and all of these others talking about the same basic principles. We have its influence. It lasts well beyond really its actual true scope of use, which is, in the context of centuries ago. Literally into the modern day is still spoken of, Rosicrucianism, Rosenkreuz, often alluded to, especially within New Age circles. Quite often, anyone who studies things like Agartha, Atlantis, sort of the New World Order stuff, entire documentaries have been made. Sometimes they have hours of content specifically about all of this Rosicrucian. It's non-canonical, the sort of taking off from it. Oh, well, this is how the Illuminati formed, sort of out of the secret society of gentlemen some time ago that lived a hermetic lifestyle. And we have to remember, people back then did exist, that cloistered themselves off from society, and oftentimes they were quite literally the most wise people in a society. They would have been held by anyone local who was aware of their existence as probably sages, probably almost demigods in a way. We have the brewing process springing up. Literacy, really at many times, only really exists for the most part among some of these scattered communities of monks and similar characters. Charlemagne was considered odd at his time for learning how to actually read and write. He made a concerted effort to be lettered. That was odd for a noble at the time. Nobles were only supposed to conduct war and stuff. Wisdom thus was held in these little groups, bringing about the belief among certain in the population that it was conspiratorial. Now that these groups, they had secret knowledge. It had to be occult, it had to be satanic, or it had to be of a high level of holiness. And so all sorts of weird stories about like wizards and things emerge, and it's all very, very interesting. So this is a very important text within the literary tradition of occultism. Now, I probably should have edited it and released it earlier. Largely, I've left it intact. I've changed some. There are obviously spelling errors in the sense of like old English. I've left the thee and thou sort of content. I've begun to do that more with texts because I've realized that it isn't that particular kind of older speech that confuses people. It's stuff that's older than that. Like if you said that a person had died, you would spell it as though you had dyed wool, or used food coloring, D-Y-E instead of D-I-E was the spelling. Or mere as in slight. Or inconsequential, M-E-E-R within this text. Of course, I've modernized that because I'm not talking about a meerkat. So we've got to keep that in mind a little bit when we're editing some of these documents. You got to make a choice. Are you going to leave it completely intact, modernize it completely, or sort of go in between the two? Generally, going in between seems to make more sense. It leaves the authenticity and original meaning intact as much as possible while making it capable of being read by the average human being living today. And so I enjoy doing that. Again, link in the description of my edition of this work on Amazon. Second and third links are to my blogs. You can find other works of alchemy, some Rosicrucian lore, Hermeticism, a little bit of everything, mysticism under the sun. That's about all.